Welcome, Yvette, to the podcast. I'm so excited to interview you. Now, I met you through BBD. For those that don't know, that's Business by Design, which is a program that we're both a part of. But for our listeners, would you want to just start out with, the usual, who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. As you said, my name is Yvette. I am an ex-corporate marketer who has really aligned my business into my absolute passion for human design. And so what I really look to do is use human design to help my clients amplify their own energy to make a bigger impact. So it's very marketing related, but it's also about this knowing yourself better, being really clear on your purpose so that when you show up, that you're fully in alignment and you feel that, I would call it frequency and vibration, elevate and are able to be more potent.
I love this. Can I sign up?
I get
to work with you. Okay, so how did this happen? Like, how did you get into this?
It's an interesting story. And I think with all things, you can kind of join the dots looking back. But at the time, it was like, I went down this road, and you know what it's like as an entrepreneur. I walked out of my very, very senior global marketing career without much of a plan for how I was going to survive. I just knew that I was done and that I needed to be making more of a positive contribution in the world. And I wanted to feel lit up and liberated in the work that I do. And very quickly, actually, even before I left that role, I met a woman who was deep in human design. So this is going back just over 4 years ago. And me being very open to spirituality and how energy works, I knew nothing of human design, but I invested in an unpack, which is like reading the chart. And interestingly, one of the first things that came out is that I am a generator. And so that's one of the 5 types. And generators, and the same with manifesting generators, they're all about lighting up the world with their energy. And the fact that I'd already kind of realized that whatever I did, it needed to make myself and inspire others to feel more lit up. I was like, that's kind of spooky that you've just told me that is huge for me. And so I really enjoyed exploring my chart with her. Usually in your first reading, I would say it's a lot to take in and you keep it pretty simple from a how do I experiment with this? And then if you're like most, you end up wanting to go deeper and deeper into it because it's so resonant. And what happened with her and I is a year later, I'd become a business coach, which, that's a whole nother story, like what took me from corporate to business coaching. But I knew once I stepped into business coaching that this was my destiny. And I was still having some struggles with worthiness. I felt very uncomfortable moving from an environment where I was a very tenured leader and highly regarded and respected into being like a really small fry in the online world of growing my own business. That was really awkward for me. And I wasn't loving myself enough through that. And so I ended up working with Emma as my coach, and she comes through the lens of human design. And so again, I had some really big breakthroughs. In fact, I was coaching broadly. I was coaching corporate humans on any challenge that they had, be that health coaching, career coaching, like any coaching that you need. I was marketing myself on LinkedIn. I had a huge network because of my corporate background, and that was working for me. But as you know, from going through something like BBD, it was kind of the wrong way around to pick an audience and not pick a specialty. And it was working with that human design coach. And she kind of reflected back to me that when I worked with clients who I was helping them with their business versus clients that were more like a life coaching or an executive coaching, that my energy really shifted and I became much more lit up. And she said to me, what if you never did anything but business coaching? And I like, at first I was like, well, I've created all these programs and I've done so much work. And she said, yeah. And what if you never sold those again? And I just had this moment of, I feel relieved. And so from there, I became only a business coach, and I changed my audience, and my business really took off. It exploded really quickly. And so, of course, yeah, it's like human design has had a lot of influence over how my entrepreneurship has unfolded. Later that year, I then invested in the mastermind with the same coach that she was running to help others learn how to infuse human design into their coaching practices. And at that point, I was curious and not committed. And so I took all the information in and I played with it with my clients, but I didn't go all in. And it was only around 8 months ago when I had a bit of a frustrated, things have become more stagnant. I did BBD and I still, I came out of that with a product which was all focused on digital product creation, which I love and know and have a lot of experience in. But honestly, there's a much more spiritual side to me, and I felt like I wasn't able to explore that so much. And I decided to embody my design more and let that lead me. And what happened is just so fascinating. So things really shifted in terms of my energy. And I run a mastermind for women, female entrepreneurs. And they could really pick up on this shift in me. And they were like, you need to be bringing more of this into the mastermind. So from there, I started teaching them about their design. And before I knew it, I realized that I was gaining, they were gaining so much from this that I started opening my up readings, and they booked out really quickly. And in a way, I felt called into this versus I created a strategy that this is the direction my business would go in. And the clue is it's felt really easy.
I love all this. I can resonate on so many levels.
Amazing. I love
so many. I can't even tell you. Wow. But it's not about me. It's about you. And the reason I was so excited to talk to you is because, when I reached out to the group and I said, I really want to interview somebody about human design, I think there are quite a few people who are like, oh, Yvette. So,
which again, imagine how quickly that has happened.
Yeah.
It's and I think one of the reason that I've so quickly gained traction is because there's a lot of human design coaches who are focused on business. There's very few that are focused on marketing.
Right.
And because of my background, that's just where my intuition took me. Again, it wasn't a strategy. It was, well, this is how I see the best way that you can leverage this knowledge of yourself in making an impact.
Okay, so can we back it up for people who don't know what human design is and explain what a generator to I'm a projector, all the different ones are?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So human design is a genuine mix of ancient wisdom and quantum physics, which is quite modern. It combines 4 different ancient, I'll use the word wisdom again, ancient wisdoms, but it combines astrology, the Kabbalah tree of life, the chakra system, and of course, I'm putting myself on the spot and having a small brain freeze right now.
That's all right.
Oh, the I Ching, and the I Ching is so important in this. And so there's those 4 kind of modalities, let's call them, as well as quantum physics. It was created or was downloaded to an individual in the 70s, Ra Uruhu, although that was kind of a name he took on versus was born with. And he spent 3 or 4 days just being downloaded on this new way of integrating all of the ancient wisdom and combining it with the quantum to better understand humanity and how individuals' energy works. And so it has been around for nearly 50 years. And in that time, it was, I think, quite slowly adopted, and things have really taken off in the last 5 years, like to the point where it's reached, I would say it's reached mainstream in the coaching world, but outside of the coaching world, it's still very much new and early adopter.
Yeah.
And what it actually does is it integrates all of those modalities into a body graph that shows you how your personal energy works based on the time and date you were born and place. So it's like astrology, it's the moment you were born, but we also look at 3 months before being born. So there's 2 sides to the chart that make up kind of your more conscious and your less conscious parts of your graph. The top line is your type. So like if you think about in astrology, there's 12 signs. In human design, there's 5 types. They are the generator, which is myself. Did you say you're a projector?
I'm a projector.
Yeah, I'll get into that in a second. So generators are the biggest group, and we are really designed to do work, to kind of be the doers and to create life force. We have defined sacrals, so we have a lot of energy, and using that up is what makes us happy. But we're kind of the kind of person that comes into a room and you're excited that we're here because we're always bringing that energy with us. So it's kind of like this magnetic, infectious type of person. Then you have I'll go to the manifestor next. What's unique about a manifestor is they have a defined throat, and they are the only sign that is really able to initiate and create what has never existed in the world before from their own insight and intellect. So they can manifest really effectively. They are big energies, and they're a bit love-hate energy. Like they're not as easy to get along with. They're like the power person in the room. In the old kind of hierarchy, you'd think of them as the CEO, the leader. They're not doers as much. They're more of a setting the agenda and leading the charge versus in the weeds. But without them, we don't function because we don't innovate. We don't move forward. And the reason I went to manifestor next is there is then what is called a manifesting generator, which is a hybrid of the manifestor and the generator. They are more closely aligned to generator energy because they have a defined sacral. When you have a defined sacral, it's the largest energy force. And so as a manifesting generator, they have the defined throat, but they also have the defined sacral. So they have more energy to actually have ideas and then make them happen.
Okay.
What gets in their way is manifesting generators tend to be really good starters versus finishers. They love starting something new, get really excited, and then they get bored with it, and then they start something else. And so they kind of go through life thinking that they're hopeless because they never finish anything. But actually they're designed that way, and they're meant to follow, like generators, what lights us up. Like we are on strategy when we're following what lights us up and releasing what doesn't. Now, for both generators and manifesting generators, that can feel a little bit selfish because you're like, I don't want the hard things. I just want to focus on the amazing things and feel amazing. But the way that we work as a collective is that this is our role. Without this can make it happen, bring the energy, bring the life force, then the planet doesn't turn. And understanding that is really important so that you can kind of respect and reflect different roles in how society works, and know that it's not selfish. In fact, the more that we are allowed to go after only what feels amazing in our bodies and souls, the better. Okay, so then we move to the projector, which is you.
That's
and
me.
Yay! Projectors are 20% of the population. So, but manifesting generators and generators make up 70%. So a huge part of the population. And one thing I would call out as someone who works on brand voice is it's really important to know that when you're marketing, that 70% of the population want to feel lit up.
Oh,
Something to consider.
That's it. I've never thought about it. So so 70% of the population wants to feel lit up. It's about using your voice in a way to light them up.
Yeah, bring the energy, like elevate the
Energy.
frequency.
Right, and that lights them up. Interesting. Okay. All right. Keep going.
All right.
I'm so excited. Okay.
So projector is, and I didn't say this, but a pure manifestor is 10% of the population. Projector is kind of like the more modern leader. So projectors are the guides. They are the oracle, the wisdom keeper, the holder of the keys. So this is you. You do not have a defined sacral, and you tend to have less energy. And a lot of projectors, just going to put it out there, have grown up in a house full of generators or manifesting generators and are conditioned into believing that their energy works the same, when actually you require more rest. You require more time out. You do your best work in bursts, like in 3-4 hours, and you can get 2 days worth of somebody else's work done in that time. But then you really need your creative time, your processing time, your nature time for you to continue to grow in a way that is true to your guidance. That's what you are. You're a guide.
Mm.
So when I draw this, and I don't even know where I learned this, it was years ago, but I draw this image of how all the different types work together, and the manifestor's out the front, but the projector's up in the helicopter shining the lights so the manifestor can see where to go.
Oh, wow.
So that's the kind of energy. It's like I can see out in front to make sure that you're guiding them to go in the right direction.
Yeah. Are there a lot of visionaries that are projectors then?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's definitely a more role model-y type energy.
Mm.
And they find, projectors can find it being a bit frustrating to be a generator, because here's a little tip for you. Not everybody wants your wisdom. Okay, so the biggest challenge that you have is all this knowledge that you can't wait to impart is sometimes met with, just leave me alone. Like, I didn't ask for your advice. And actually the most powerful strategy for projectors is to wait to be invited.
Yes. Yes. That was the one thing I've only learned a little bit about human design and being a projector. And it is so true for the projectors, that waiting for the invitation. And when I think about any sort of success I've had in my business, it's been people coming to me whenever I try and push it, or try something new that I'm not quite sure about, and I'm putting it out there. And I've got this sort of like need for approval, or someone to buy a new service or an idea. It doesn't happen. It's when people come to me. So true.
And so knowing this, it's about not putting yourself in that situation where you feel like you're pushing.
Yeah.
And that you allow yourself to be in the energy of attraction and wait. The other thing that projectors do benefit from is you love accolades and awards. So it's really interesting, the conversation we had before we came into this. Just talking to me about this.
Were you thinking, oh, she's a projector?
I actually didn't, because I was just getting ready to chat. But now that I know that, it makes a lot of sense.
Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah, one of one of the great ways to market as a projector is to really celebrate those wins, because it feels amazing. You're not asking for anything of anyone, but it is very magnetic.
Right.
And then the
so funny.
last type is the reflector, which is only 1% of the population. Reflectors have, and I know we haven't been to all the dynamics of a chart, but they have no centers defined, which means that they're very open. And in the image of all of the types, they're like the blimp who can see 360, and they are the pulse checker of what's going on, versus the guide. They're not out there leading, but they're just able to see, like, what does the world need right now energetically. It can be a very exhausting type because they are absorbing everybody else all of the time, feeling other people's thoughts, or firstly their emotions, but also like when they're around people, they kind of can pick up on everything that's going on for them. And yet that it's also the most powerful sign because they're the most plugged into the other.
So cool. This is so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am so curious how the voice is related to human design. So knowing your human design and knowing that you're a personal brand and you need to put yourself out there and you need to market yourself, how can you use your human design to learn how to use your voice in your business, whether it's, creating online content? Should I do video? Should I do a podcast?
Yeah.
How do you work out what's the best way to market yourself, use your voice based on your human design?
Yes. Okay. I've got a couple of answers on that. So the first thing I would say is to look at your profile numbers. Do you know what yours are?
I have them somewhere.
Okay. So there's 6 profile numbers and your profile is made up of 2. So I'm a 5-1 by way of example.
Oh, okay. Now I remember. I think I'm a 5-2 from memory.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. And the profile lines closely align to your personality and therefore your personal brand. And this is the part that I find has the most market intelligence inside of it for this reason. And when I work with a lot of clients, it completely shifts how they market themselves and what type of products they create. And well, it's really energy amplification. So I'm going to give you an example of this. First, I'll tell you a bit about the profile lines. There are 6 lines, and the first 3, so line 1, line 2, and line 3, are very interpersonal, and the 4, 5, and 6 are more about the other. Okay, so for you, as an example, let's assume you're a 5-2. Your first line is your conscious line, which is the 5. The 5 is driven to help people. A lot of coaches have a 5 because our go-to strategy through life is to come in and save the day, rescue. We're always thinking about other people and how we can help them. We're also kind of born leaders because we do have answers to challenges and problems. We really do provide those solutions. One of the harder things about being a line 5 is we tend to be projected onto a lot because we're seen as this savior type. People kind of can come into your world as a client thinking that you're going to save them. And then the reality is that they need to save themselves. So they're projecting this, she's my savior. But when they're in relationship with you, they will quickly discover that you are human. You have a lot of wisdom, that they ultimately need to figure things out for themselves, even with your guidance. So that's the 5. As I said, it's more about the other. And then your 2 is the second line, which is known as the hermit. It's also the gifted child. So line 2 is somebody that needs alone time to figure things out. And actually, they often can't explain how they figured something out because they have natural talents and gifts. And they're like, well, I just figured it out. And what tends to happen if you've got like a higher number first and then a 2 is, you're kind of called out into the world to share, and you have to bring yourself to a place of being able to teach what you know. And that can be a little bit more complicated because so much of it felt innate.
Mm.
So when it comes to how you market in this environment, you're going to want to get really clear on how you can help people and how to unpack your natural brilliance in a way that you can communicate it to attract people. Look at you moving your head.
This is so true. This is so true. Because when I started to evolve my business, niching up, as I told you before, we got on the podcast, is where I got into trouble is I knew I wanted to evolve. I knew I wanted to work with a bigger audience, but I didn't know how to speak to what I did and where my talent lied. And it took me a while to figure that out, to get really clear on the message. You're right.
Yeah. The other thing about the line 2 is you don't like following other people's ways of doing
Correct. Oh my goodness, Yvette. It's like you're telling my fortune. It's so true.
Yes. Okay. So as you can see, as I was talking you through your profile, there were really distinct lessons for your marketing.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing that I would look to in a human design chart around voice is purpose and identity, because you are projecting out that purpose. And if you're not clear, if you don't have clarity, then your voice won't be resonant. So there's that. So there are parts of the chart that are really going to help you get clear on, am I on purpose? Is the function that I am playing in the world right for me? Like, am I born for this, really?
Yeah.
And when you get into parts of the chart, you'll quickly see if you are. So for instance, my kind of purpose from a human design perspective is taking something messy and changing it into something beautiful. So it's called difficulty at the beginning, but the way that it really plays out is I walk into a mess, I figure it all out, create success, and then show others how to do the same.
Love that.
That's kind of my purpose. And then you can really go, okay, so does that match how I'm fulfilling my purpose? And the answer for me is 100%. Now, most people come to me struggling to create the impact that they desire. And so they feel that they're in like a marketing mess.
Yeah.
And that they're trying all the things, they're throwing spaghetti at the wall. And then we work together to get them into this place where they're like, I love my marketing. This feels so good. This feels so easy.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
So needed.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's that. Then look, this is I don't want this to be polarizing, but in the chart, you have centers. They're aligned to the chakra system, only there are 7 chakras and there are 9 centers. So kind of pulls apart in that the spleen is a center, and so the solar plexus, as well as the ones that you would expect that run through the direct line of the body. So head, ajna, throat, heart, G center, sacral, root. And then the 2 go out. So if you have a defined throat, you're going to be a natural communicator. Okay. I don't want the listeners who don't have a defined throat to think, I'm never going to be good at communicating. I mean, I don't have a defined throat and I freaking love communicating. What is true, though, is that without definition in your throat, you won't have consistent access. And so sometimes you might find yourself speaking for the sake of being heard when you actually don't have a point of view.
Right.
Okay. And you don't know when you're going to have access and when you're not. So as a podcast host, if you don't have definition in your throat, you might really enjoy having guests to give your throat a break.
Interesting.
And also, the way human design works with different energies around you is people feel your energy in. So if you have a defined throat and I don't have definition, being in your energy helps my throat flow and gives me more access to consistency. So another thing would be like, if you are defined in your throat, and especially if you have connection between your ajna, your head, and your throat, then you're going to have consistent insight and consistent communication. Like your voice, it will be very easy to use your voice, and your level of confidence will be very natural. In that situation, I think on a podcast, for instance, you'd want to do most of your episodes alone. Versus if you have an open throat, you'd want to look at having regular guests. So you don't feel like you have those moments of, well, nothing's flowing, nothing's coming out. I'm filling space versus making my point or being more potent.
Right. Very interesting.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't want anyone to think you can't be an amazing communicator without definition here. It's more just getting into how does my energy work and how can I set myself up for success?
No, it's true. And gosh, I should have pulled my chart so I could look at it because we're talking about it. I'm so silly. But from memory in my head, because I've got a slight photographic memory, from memory, I am undefined in the throat.
Yeah, right.
And I'm a voice coach.
Exactly. So it doesn't prevent or preclude you at all. It's more about understanding, right, this is my energetic access to my throat. How can I know this and make it work for me?
Yeah.
The other thing, can I just say one more thing?
Totally. Yeah.
One thing that I've found to be true in my human design research and experimentation is when you're not defined, you create strategies so that you can do what you do effectively. When you're defined, you don't create strategies, it just happens. But when it comes to teaching and marketing, you're actually better to not have definition because you have to figure out the strategy to teach others, who many of whom will not have definition.
Do you have definition in one of them, at least? At least one.
Except if you're a reflector.
Except if you're a reflector. Okay. So like from memory, I'm spleen. Okay.
So with the spleen, it means you have a natural instinct that you just get instinctual hits, and you're very driven by well-being, like the overall health. That can be in business, it can be in your body, it can be in your relationships.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up, because you were talking about the throat. So I would rely on my instincts to know when to use my voice.
Yes, 100%.
That's sort of how it all works. Like,
yes,
right?
Yes, absolutely. You have that intuitive hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That all makes sense. This is so interesting. So if somebody wants to start getting into human design and learning how they can use it for marketing and developing their personal brand, like what would be the first steps? What would you recommend?
I would download your chart. You're going to look at it and freak out because so much information, and
it is, yeah.
It's like, where do I even start? But to start with, I would simply find out the type you are and your profile numbers. Start there. Then what you're going to look at is for your type. Actually, you also want to know your authority. So that's three things. So your type, your authority, and your profile numbers. So your type, you're then going to look at your type on its own and look for reading Google, essentially.
Yeah.
A little bit about that and just let that knowledge kind of integrate. From there, you'll look at your authority. Your authority is how you make decisions. Okay, so in your instance, you have splenic authority from what you recall, which means you get an intuitive hit. Okay, it's a little bit like me. I have sacral definition, which is the gut feel, and my entire body runs through my gut feel. Like I know, I like being told that. I was like, oh, that's why I don't feel it things anywhere else but there. And then, so that's your authority. So depending on what your authority is, it'll really help you make decisions. And then your profile lines is where I believe you get the richest information on marketing. If you want to jump onto my website, I have written a blog post on this as well.
Amazing. Okay. And we can link that up in the show notes. Yeah.
That would be amazing. Yeah. You can
Okay,
also
cool.
you can download your chart for free on my website. So
Oh, great.
you go straight from this episode and you start exploring, you can go onto my website and find out a lot of the information we've just spoken about.
Perfect. And so if people want to learn more about what you do as well, is it that the best place for them to reach you on your website or?
Yeah, absolutely. Or on my Instagram, it's at Yvette Meyer. I know you'll link it, but at Yvette
Definitely.
Meyer _ And look, I'm just about to ramp up again in my marketing, to be fair, because Australia, we're in the Southern Hemisphere. It's been a lovely summer after a few not so great summers.
Yes.
And I approached this year rather gently, but I'm all in now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so my TikTok will be resurrected. There's a lot of good stuff on my TikTok account. And I am soon to be launching a brand new podcast. I've had one for years, but I'm shifting into focusing on this topic specifically. So I'll let you know when that is live.
Amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear the new podcast.
Yeah.
That is music to my ears because podcasting is like my favorite thing. I think
it's the best
in business. But yeah, like any final thoughts or words of wisdom to personal brands out there who might be struggling with finding alignment in their marketing?
Mm-hmm. The biggest thing that I've learned on my journey is that the better you know yourself and your uniqueness, like how you are differentiated from others, and I'm not going to call them the competition because it's irrelevant when you're distinctly you and you are differentiated, the easier you will find your marketing. What we struggle with is all of the conditioning around you have to do this, you have to say this, you have to, like, all of that can be noise when our truth is sitting inside of us the whole time. And that's why I love human design. But it's all things like knowing why you're doing what you're doing, being focused on the service and the positive contribution ahead of the income. I think when you get into that and play in that energy, things just flow so much better and you become more abundant.
I love it. This is so great.
Amazing. I love chatting to you.
Yvette, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And everyone, please reach out to her. We've only just met, but I'm like itching to work with you now. So thanks so much and wishing you all the best.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity.